Welcome to the Strong AF podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Natasha Barnes. I'm a strength and rehab coach for climbers, and I blend my 24 years of expertise and experience as an elite level climber, competitive powerlifter, and rehab professional to bring you a podcast that will help you become stronger and more resilient. In this podcast, we'll talk about all things strength training for climbers. We'll also talk about climbing injuries, rehab, and why training and rehab go hand in hand. To connect, be sure to follow me over on Instagram at Natasha Barnes. To find out more about coaching or getting help with an injury, check out my website at natashabarnesrehab.com. And now, let's get to the episode. You've likely just spent the last few months training hard and pushing your body to new limits. You've gotten stronger, more skilled, and mentally tough with the hopes that you'll be able to perform at a higher level this season. So then why do so many athletes stop strength training once their season begins? Is it lack of motivation to train once the outdoor season begins? The worry that training will cut into climbing practice or leave you with less energy to send? Not knowing how to train productively through the season? Is it a fear of being tired or sore from a workout? Is it a fear that it'll cut into climbing time? These are common excuses that I've heard from people to avoid training during the season. No matter the reason, the fact is this: strength training is often the most neglected aspect of physical preparation once the season begins. Between weekly climbing sessions, outdoor trips, maybe even competitions, the weight room often gets left out of the equation. Although it might not seem like a big deal, an extended layoff from strength training can actually tank an athlete's overall performance during the season. When you stop strength training, strength adaptations begin to wane, and by the end of the season, you'll have lost strength. Training will look different during your performance season, but it doesn't stop. I'm going to give you 3 reasons you need in-season strength training. Reason number 1, to maintain performance. Skipping out on the weight room for the entirety of the season can have significant detrimental effects on your strength levels. The stronger you are, the more force you can produce. The more force you can produce, the easier hard climbing will feel. You can explode on the wall for a dyno or a longer move. You can handle higher falls. You can crimp harder, and you can hold on for longer because you're using a smaller percentage of your absolute max grip strength. Climbers want to be feeling their best when it matters the most. Sometimes the most important sends are going to happen at the end of your season once you've had the chance to reacquaint yourself with climbing outdoors more and have had the time to find a project or rework the beta on an old project that you're returning to. No one wants to be at their strongest at the beginning of the season only to see their strength and power shrivel away as the calendar turns to those crucial late season sends. That's exactly what you're setting yourself up for if you don't perform any in-season strength training. A loss of training-induced body adaptations in response to a lack of training stimulus is known as detraining. For all but the elite of the elite, avoiding the weight room for a few weeks will be enough to, unfortunately, kickstart your detraining. Okay, consider this. I'm going to give you a football example. I don't know if anybody's a football fan, but in the week leading up to the Super Bowl 51, the New England Patriots were squatting 80% of their max. They were 20 plus weeks into the season by that point, but they know how important their weight room work was to their continued success. For what it's worth, the Patriots went on to win that game after overcoming a 25-point deficit. So even the pros, professional football players, know that they need to continue their strength training even during a performance like the Super Bowl. Okay, reason number 2. Durability/injury risk reduction. The 2 most important qualities that any athlete can have are strength and durability. Are you strong enough to withstand the demands of the sport? Are you free from injury so that you can perform at your best and actually show up outdoors and send? A strong athlete is a durable athlete. We have scientific literature that shows that strength training can reduce your risk of injury up to 66%. This is Lorson et al. 2018. That's a pretty big number. That's significant. By maintaining and in some cases increasing your strength over the course of a season, you'll be able to better withstand the demands of climbing. From personal experience as a coach and as a rehab professional, I have seen climbers begin to break down at the end of the season, which limits their availability to go climbing and obviously limits their performance. And sometimes it's not even the end of the season. Sometimes it's the middle of the season or even the beginning of the season if you haven't already been doing some training or something like that to support your climbing going into this. Okay, reason number 3. So you don't lose your gains. You have worked hard all season to get stronger and more powerful. So why stop training just to have to start back over again in the next off season? If you stop your strength training once the season starts, you'll slowly regress back to where you were at the beginning of the off season. Then what was the point of the off season to begin with, right? If you're constantly taking one step forward and 2 steps back in the weight room, you'll never come remotely close to realizing your full athletic potential. For long-term development of your physical abilities, strength training while in season is incredibly important. Every climber wants to get better from year to year, but if you allow all your gains to disappear every time you're in season, that's going to be extremely difficult. So to recap, strength training needs to be maintained for a few reasons. 1, to maintain your performance throughout the season. 2, injury risk reduction. 3, to prevent detraining. Okay, next I'd like to talk a little bit about how you should strength train in season. So now you know why you should strength train during your climbing season, but how do you go about actually doing it? Should you keep it light? Should you do high reps, low reps? Should you go heavy? What's the best way to prevent training-related soreness from impacting your outdoor climbing session? Here are some general guidelines that should help answer some of the burning questions that I get for in-season strength training for climbers. So one thing that we want to do is maintain maximal strength. Maximal strength is the basis for all important sports performance qualities such as power and even endurance is indirectly related to strength, because the stronger you are, the less of your max each individual move is using, right? Or the lower percentage of your max each crimp move that you're doing is using for your finger strength. And if that's the case, you're going to be more efficient and you're going to be able to hang on for longer. Strength is defined as the ability to produce force against an external resistance. So because of that, like simply practicing the sport, simply climbing is not going to be nearly enough stimulus to maintain, and definitely not enough to increase this essential quality of strength. It's really important to focus on max strength during your in-season weight room sessions to maintain your strength levels. Maintaining a high intensity but not maxing out during your training will be important for your in-season training. I'll say it again. Remember what I mentioned before about the Patriots squatting 80% of their max during Super Bowl week? You should bring that same mindset to your in-season strength training. We also want to make sure that we're managing fatigue. The only thing that really matters in season is weekend climbing performance for most people. That's why managing your in-season fatigue is absolutely vital. One of the biggest contributors to fatigue is volume, both in climbing and in strength training. Most climbers are not going to budge on their climbing time, especially during in-season, so it's important to limit the amount of fatigue that occurs in the weight room so that we're not accumulating too much volume from both our climbing and our strength training sessions. Focusing on strength and power rep ranges, so probably going to be somewhere between like 2 and 6 reps, Nothing super magical about those numbers. Could be 1 rep, could be 7 reps is probably okay. But somewhere between 2 and 6 reps per set is usually good, and for a few sets. Usually I like to program like 2 or 3, maybe 4 sets. If we're not doing very many reps, we'll do more sets to make up the volume. But that'll give you the right amount of stimulus without creating too much fatigue. And if we're utilizing autoregulation, that can also be really helpful to minimize accumulating too much fatigue from your training sessions. And that doesn't just mean keeping things at RPE 8 or RPE 7 or whatever, RPE. We can also use autoregulation to autoregulate training volume. We can put fatigue stops on the number of sets that you do. There's ways to program that in. We're not going to talk about specific programming techniques in this podcast, but we can do that in a future podcast. And one of the ways that I like to auto-regulate volume is programming in fatigue stops for the number of sets that we're doing, meaning you would do a top set at whatever RPE, and then you would continue repeating that weight until it felt like a certain RPE, and then you would stop there. So that could look something like doing sets at RPE 8 or even RPE 7, and then repeating that same weight until you got to a set that felt like RPE 8 or 9, and then you would cut the volume there, however many sets that ended up being. That can be one strategy, and that'll take into consideration different people's fitness levels in a strength training program. That's one strategy. Okay, we also want to use general exercises. As you move through your off season, you hopefully went from general physical preparation exercises to more sport-specific movements preseason. But as you begin to move into your in-season schedule, you should leave the sport-specific work to actual on-the-wall sessions. And that's most of the time anyway. The stuff that we do in the weight room isn't supposed to look like our sport, but we can get a little bit more specific with the type of exercises that we're using. So an example of that could be like, instead of doing regular full range of motion pull-ups in your off season, as we get into your preseason, we can start doing lock-offs at 90 degrees or something like that, like weighted lock-offs instead of a full pull-up, because it's going to be a little bit more like what you're going to be doing in climbing. We're typically not doing a full pull-up on a climbing wall, but we are locking off or holding a 90-degree position or somewhere close to that pretty often as we lock off to clip, as we lock off to reach. There's lots of situations where we might find ourselves in that position. And so that's an example of how it can go from a more general exercise to a slightly more specific exercise. We also want to limit muscle soreness in season as well. Muscle soreness can have an effect on performance, as you probably know. You can experience a decreased range of motion, a reduction in strength and power, and changes in technique when you're sore. All of these mechanisms the body uses to protect the tissues you damaged during your last workout, which was the goal, since tissue damage creates muscle growth. But we want to limit that in season so it doesn't affect your outdoor performance. These are some surefire ways to elicit soreness from your workouts. 1, excessive volume. 2, too much intensity, going way too heavy or like maxing out every set. 3, novel exercises that are introduced at too high an intensity or volume, or sometimes just novel exercises at all. 4, this is kind of not related to the workout itself, but it's kind of a bonus reason. Not eating enough to fuel or recover from training can also lead to soreness, and you don't want to significantly change the way that you're eating in season unless you're working with like a nutritionist or a dietitian who's advising you to do this. You want to eat about the same. You want to make sure that you're eating enough to support your climbing sessions, specifically eating enough carbohydrate before and during a climbing session, and also eating enough protein to recover from the sessions. And keep in mind that a lot of us are actually hiking to crags or to boulders in season. And so we're doing a lot more hiking, we're doing a lot more walking. You're probably going to actually need more carbs to sustain yourself for outdoor sessions than you would for an indoor session, because there's also that hiking component. You're carrying pads, all of that kind of thing, unless you're lucky enough to be going to some roadside boulders. So it might be boring, but keeping your workouts simple and straightforward will also allow you to train and maintain your strength without it negatively affecting your climbing performance. So in-season programs can sometimes feel a little bit boring, but that's okay. We don't want to change it up too much during the season. Okay, now I'd like to talk a little bit about how to fit strength training in with the rest of your climbing. There's no magical split for anybody. This is one of the biggest questions that I get whenever it comes to strength training for climbing. When should you do it? There's only one little difference that I would say in season versus like your off season. You can do the training the same day or a different day than your climbing training. It doesn't really matter, especially if your program is auto-regulated. If you're doing it on the same day as climbing, and here's the difference, I would suggest doing it after climbing. Off season, some people might actually want to do it before their climbing session, and there's lots of reasons for that. That way you can do the strength sessions while you're fresh, because you're sort of de-emphasizing your performance in the climbing sessions. And for a lot of people, once you get adapted to the off-season training, it can actually feel like a pretty good warm-up for climbing to do it beforehand. The other reason is doing it after in season, because we're not concerned necessarily with the performance of the strength training session in season. We just want to make sure that we're getting the stimulus so that we continue to stay strong throughout the season. And there's lots of different ways to hash it. So you can fit all your strength training into one day. You can break it up and fit it into 2 days if you have time for that. If you're really time poor and you can't spend a lot of time in the weight room at the gym, you can even break it up into more sessions and just divide up the exercises over the course of the week instead of trying to fit it all into like 1 or 2 sessions if you have, more than a few exercises that you want to make sure that you're doing and maintaining. So there's lots of different ways that we can hash it. There's no perfect way. There's no best way. There's just whatever way works for you, whatever way works for your schedule, whatever way works for your energy levels. So I would experiment with that and see what works for you. Generally, what I have most people do is split it into 1 or 2 sessions, and that seems to work fine. And if you have enough time at the climbing gym on the same days that you're having a climbing session, just doing it after the climbing session, and that seems to work well for most people. Your in-season sessions shouldn't be taking more than 45 minutes to an hour. An hour is even kind of pushing it. If you are warming up efficiently and you're not resting too long, you definitely want to rest. We've talked about this on other podcasts, but you shouldn't be resting like too long. Your session shouldn't really be taking longer than an hour maximum. And if it is, you might need to improve your warm-up strategy, or you might need to find ways to be a little bit more efficient in the gym. One of those ways is to start warming up for your next exercise while you're finishing the last exercise. Usually we're going to program, it could be like a deadlift that you start with, and then you're going to transition over to like bench press or something like that. You can start warming up your bench press while you're finishing up your deadlifts, because it's not really going to affect your deadlift that much, especially when you're just warming up for bench press where it's submaximal weight. And then by the time you're finished with deadlifts, you're getting right into the main portion of your bench press session, and that can save a lot of time. So if you're somebody who would like some help with structuring an in-season strength program, you want to be told what exercises to do, you want to be told what reps and sets to do, how many reps and sets to do, you want your program to be auto-regulated, and you want to learn how to auto-regulate your strength training, I have an in-season strength training program that's going to be dropping in our app, and it's going to take care of all of this for you. And when you sign up for the program, there's also a community forum where you can ask questions, and I'll be able to respond to your questions every week. That program is available right now. I will leave the link for the program in the show notes. If you're somebody who wants programming while you're in season, you want to maintain your strength throughout the season, this is going to be a perfect program for you. It's an 8-week program. I know the season for some people is longer than 8 weeks. You can definitely repeat the program if that's the case for you. And you'll be able to ask me questions while you're in the program. And the program can be stopped and started whenever you want. So if you're going on like a longer trip where you're not going to have access to the gym, you can pause the program for while you're on that trip and restart it when you get back. If you're somebody who's like a weekend warrior who is going to have access to the gym during the week, it's the perfect program for you. And again, you can stop and start whenever you want. You can repeat the program. You can do it this season, and then you can come back to it your next performance season. And it's going to be available in our app. We also have other programs available in the app, including the foundational strength training program, which I'll also leave a link in the show notes too. It's a great program. We've had a ton of climbers already do it. We have 165 people doing it right now. We have had even more people do it when it was originally in the PDF form. I think we had over 200 people do it, 250 people do it. It's a great program. The program that's available in the app right now has been updated. You also have a community forum. You have a whole bunch of educational resources that are available to you for learning about strength training for climbing, for learning how to auto-regulate your training. It is a super great resource. I highly recommend doing both of these programs. You can do the foundational strength training program in your off season, and you can do the in-season program while you're in your season. And we have more programs coming to the app as well. But that'll be in the show notes. That is the end of this episode. This is kind of a shorter one this time. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me over email or reach out to me on Instagram, and I'll be sure to answer any questions that you might have about in-season strength training for climbing. Thanks again for listening, and I will catch you on the next episode.